Hi, this is Lowell, and we're talking about music theory. This is my last of the series of music theory, and I wanted to just put this as an additional thought in terms of the subject of music theory and of composition, and basically give a little bit of a synopsis of where we are in music history. And, music. Our concept of music keeps evolving, and what was understood as forefront music creation back in the day of J.S. Bach is now, of course, and we in today's generation we still greatly appreciate the pioneering that he did, but we're now in another time frame historically where there are other people who have experimented and have pioneered in and are still pioneering in various ways. And one of the foremost ways of pioneering is the subject, what is called spectralism. And spectralism, if you take a look at a piano and you look, towards the left are the low notes and towards the right are the high notes, and but there's a space in between each note, and so there are actually pitches in between each note of the piano, and there's an infinite number of pitches in between each note of the piano, and so basically a piano is a slice of the entire musical spectrum of what we hear. Each note is kind of like one post of musical tone, uh, and then the next note is another post, and so in between those posts are a lot of other possibilities of pitches, and so human hearing is from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, and of course dogs hear much higher, and other animals hear lower, I'm sure, and the whole universe is vibrating frequency. And so the Earth has its own rotation, and then the planetary rotations and the universal galaxies are spinning around, and so we all are in motion constantly. And but in terms of music, and our understanding of music is what we hear, and so spectralism deals with all the frequencies in between all the piano notes, if you want to call it that way. This is kind of my little simplistic way of talking about spectralism. But if you break down the word spectral, the spectrum of what we hear, and so composers in the 20th century would have developed, and Gerald Greisy would be one, John Cage, Harry Partch. These are people who have been experimenting with, in the later part of the 20th century into the 21st century. And of course, computer technology has augmented this. But essentially, taking all the different types of pitch that are available, and working with timbre, working with the overtone series, working with noise, and when you hear, like for example, when you hear a snare drum hit, it's not an actual specific pitch. It's kind of like a cluster of many pitches that creates kind of like that cluster of noise, which would be an example maybe of how you could use spectralism or think of spectralism. It does get into the concept of what I've talked about before in terms of the overtone series, and just I don't want to go real deep into this, but essentially the very lowest overtone of the very lowest notes in an overtone series is what we call the fundamental. And so the first few nodes of the fundamental, or of that pitch, are basically creating your harmony. It's creating your root, your octave, your fifth, your third, and so essentially a triad is formed, and then your seventh, and then on up, and it becomes the higher the harmonics go, the smaller they get, and it becomes essentially a major scale. And then the higher the harmonics go, it becomes chromatic. And then even higher than that, it becomes microtonal. And even higher than that, it becomes these pitches and these frequencies become so close together that they really become sort of like noise, because they're tiny, they're very closely compacted pitches. And so spectralism, in my opinion, can fit into the overtone series, the subject of noise. There's all sorts of different kinds of noise. When you're creating synthesis, you have white noise, pink noise, um, others that basically can be used to create different types of sound. And then the subject of synthesis, which Karlheim Stockhausen worked on quite a bit in the mid 1900s, to create uh, synthetic sound. And one type of creating synthetic sound was what we call subtractive synthesis. And subtractive synthesis takes basically a block of all these frequencies of white noise and starts pulling away what you don't want, to create the sounds that you do want. And so another type of synthesis is called additive synthesis. And that's where you start basically taking frequency generated tone generators and adding them against each other to so that waveforms are influencing each other to create different types of waveforms, square waves, triangle waves, sawtooth waves, and all sorts of other types of waveforms that mimic or sound like instruments that we're familiar with. And so that's how we end up getting synthesizers. But the foundation of everything that we enjoy now, of having synthesizers, the keyboards that play all these different types of sounds, it comes from the research into spectralism, and how we use the entire frequency spectrum to generate and create sounds that we want. So I wanted to leave you with that thought. There's much more about music theory that we could talk about, but I just wanted to give an overview of the subject of music theory, and I hope that this helps you as a developing music student and an appreciation factor of understanding music better.